I read 4 best-selling Indian horror books. Two of them absolutely amazing, and the other two made me want to question my hobby of reading books. These are all bestsellers in Indian horror genre. Some are hyped everywhere, especially in traditional media, but do they actually deliver? Here's my take on them. Book 1, Yakshini by Neil De Silva. What happens when beauty isn't a blessing but a curse? Meet Minakshi, a girl so beautiful she's probably even more beautiful or equally beautiful like an actual goddess. She has a deep, almost mystical connection with nature. But hidden behind that divine beauty is something far darker. There's something living inside her, something ancient, something dangerous, something that's not human. Yakshini is a terrifying dive into supernatural horror where the line between women and otherworldly entity is constantly blurred. This isn't your typical possession story. This is rooted in Indian mythology, but make no mistake, the horror genre here is front and center. As the evil eye falls on Minakshi, this entity awakens, and once it does, there's no turning back. The violence is brutal, the fear is constant, and the worst part, you're scared for Minakshi even as you are scared of what she's capable of. Her husband's life in danger, her family shattered, her identity consumed by something ancient and unspeakable. If you're looking for a book that grips you from page one and leaves you disturbed in the best way possible, Yakshini might just be your kind of nightmare. So let's talk about what really worked according to me in Yakshini. First of all, the suspense. On point. The entity inside Minakshi is so unpredictable, you are constantly on edge, especially when a new man enters her life. You just know something's going to go wrong, but you don't know how or when. That tension, so amazing. There's also this brilliant layer of mystery woven into the story, like those coins Minakshi finds under the sal tree. I don't know how to pronounce that, okay? Like, I'm just learning about trees and their names, okay? They seem so minor, the coins, and the whole thing behind it. It seems so minor at first, but the whole time you're asking, what's the deal with that? And honestly, that's the same feeling you have about Minakshi herself. You're constantly wondering, who is she really? The writing, solid, clean, effective, and surprisingly beautiful at times. The structure is tight, the pacing never drags. Honestly, this is rare in modern Indian fiction. A lot of books I've read either have a great concept but fall flat in execution, or vice versa. Some are well written but feel empty, some have depth but are messy. Yakshini delivers on all fronts. The story has weight, the characters feel real, and the horror hits hard. Honestly, there's not much I didn't like about this book. Maybe a few parts that felt a tiny bit drawn out, or the ending, which was kind of like okay, but not like mind blowing, but nothing that ruined the experience. For me, Yakshini was a standout. It's disturbing in all the right ways, rooted in Indian mythology, but driven by character. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and honestly, it deserves more than that. Let's talk about the next book now, Ghosts in the Dark Silence. Everything is spoiler free, do not worry. If you've seen my earlier video on Indian horror books, you might remember Ghosts of the Silent Hills by Anita Krishan, probably one of the best selling ghost stories collections in India right now. Ghosts in the Dark Silence is another short story collection by the same author. The difference this time, the stories are longer. The similarity, the same strong writing style and effective storytelling that stood out to me the last time. This book has 5 stories, each eerie in its own way. Let's go through them one by one, spoiler free again. Story 1 is The Eternal Ties. This is a ghost story set in Shimla, and it gets creepy super fast. It follows a teenager who's just turned 18 in 1975, and he's being haunted. But this isn't a one time encounter. This ghost keeps showing up again and again until it messes with this boy's mind so badly that he spirals into depression. There's more to the haunting though. It's tied to reincarnation and to secrets buried way back in the British era. That historical angle adds some depth to the plot, and the vibe is very Chilly Hills meets unfinished business kind. Now, this was actually my least favorite story in the collection, not because it's bad, but because some parts of it sort of like dragged and felt preachy. In my opinion, I think the story was a bit longer than what I would have expected, and like that full-on karma dialogue from Dr. Rawat at the almost the end of the story, that was a little too preachy for me, too textbook for me. Still, it's a solid opener with a good story, and it sets the mood well for what's coming next. Because the next story is called The Sinister Invasion. And this one taps into a whole different fear. Buying your first home only to find out you have basically walked into a haunted house. Puneet and Payal are a young couple finally stepping into a new chapter, but Puneet carries serious emotional baggage. He was bullied and assaulted during his medical college years, and that trauma has shaped his entire life, from his career switch to his strained relationship with his parents. For him, owning a house is about reclaiming his self worth. With Payal's love and support, they finally buy one. That's when the nightmare begins. They move into their new home in late 1995, and from that point on, it's just a slow, terrifying descent into supernatural chaos. The story has some genuinely unsettling moments, and Anita Krishan builds the tension really very well. That said, I did have a few things I didn't like. The timeline felt a bit off to me. There's this bit where someone recalls trying all of like missing mans. So there's this missing man, and like the mother, or I don't know if the father says, like, we tried calling all of his friends, and this is from what I'm assuming in 1993, before 1995, before Puneet and Payal story is happening. Landlines were rare at that time. Mobiles were barely a thing. So that didn't quite add up, you know. Also, Puneet, for someone who's clearly been through trauma, he's shockingly dismissive when Payal starts expressing her fear at one point. Like, dude, your house is clearly haunted and you're still gaslighting your wife for dismissing her. He has some solid, like, ideal husband moments, sure, but when it really counts, he kind of fails her. Still, this story hits hard, especially as the haunting escalates. A very atmospheric, very well written piece. The next story is the Ouija backlash, because what's a ghost story collection without an Ouija board experiment gone wrong, right? This one is about a 16-year-old girl living in an army household in Srinagar, Kashmir in 1992. She messes around with an Ouija board, and yeah, you can guess how that ends. A single slip up, and she's being haunted for years. Like, this spirit follows her across cities, Ambala, Delhi, you name it. The premise is solid, a teenage mistake that spirals into lifelong horror. That's a great story, according to me. But, and here's the but, some details just didn't sit right with me, like this scene where they get a new puppy. On day one, the puppy happily snuggles under her quilt like they have been besties forever. And I'm sorry, but as someone who has raised and fostered dogs, I call this major fiction. Pups on their first night, they are anxious, scared, and probably crying for their mom. Always crying for their mom. They're not cozy cuddle buddies at all. And don't get me started about the mom. Her daughter is clearly going through something supernatural and terrifying, and she's just like blind to it. Or she's pretending to be. Either way, her cluelessness was next level frustrating. That said, despite all the eye rolls, the ending was actually good. There's closure, there's payoff, and the ghost doesn't just vanish into thin air, which I appreciated. Story number 4 in this short story collection was A Misled Spirit. Now, this one messed up with my head for real, because it's not just a ghost story. It's a cautionary tale about trust, betrayal, and the dangers of letting the wrong people into your life. A Misled Spirit follows a couple, but unlike the earlier stories, this one dives into possession, or like attempts at possession, like an entity is trying to consume you. This story creeps up on you. It's spooky, yes, but also kind of personal, because it makes you think about your circle, those harmless people who may be secretly jealous of you. Definitely one of the more thought provoking and terrifying stories in the collection. And lastly, you have The Resurgence. This is the final story where things get dark. We are talking black magic, agories, and full on supernatural stuff. But here's the twist, it's also kind of like hilarious, you know. The Resurgence picks up with a character from the previous story and gives us the backstory we didn't know we needed. We find out how he became this particular character, how he became who he is, and let's just say it's a wild ride. There are dark rituals, shady gurus, and enough supernatural chaos to fill an entire book. But then there's this one scene. He is in real life threatening trouble in this scene. Everything's crashing down, and this man just bolts, like full on sprinting his way out of danger. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it so was to me. It still replays in my head all the time, because I just felt that that particular scene in this book was so unexpectedly satisfying. It might just be like one of the best scenes I've read in the book. Just hit me like that, you know. Overall, I think Ghost in the Dark Silence is a well structured, satisfying read. There are a few moments in like each of the stories where you're just like, this is like stretching it. Like, this is, I know this is fiction and all, like everything is imagined, but this is like slightly stretching the truth, you know. But otherwise, it's like really good. A lot of short story collections, especially in the horror genre, tend to rely on cliffhangers or leave you hanging with half-baked ideas. And while I really enjoyed reading Anita Krishan's previous book, Ghosts of the Silent Hills, I know some of you felt those stories leaned a little too much into the open to interpretation zone or like ended too early. But this book, not at all. These stories are longer, there's more build up, more depth, and a lot more actual haunting. You get backstory, suspense, and some truly intense supernatural moments that keep you hooked. If you like your horror with atmosphere, twists, and a bit of emotional drama thrown in, this one's worth checking out. Book 3, Afterlife Ghost Stories from Goa by Jessica Faleiro. It's a collection of interlinked short stories told by members of a family who are gathered on a rainy night in Goa. The setup is classic: thunder, lightning, and a bunch of relatives sharing ghost stories from their lives. Each story is supposedly personal, touching on the themes of supernatural, death, and the afterlife. As each family member recounts their eerie experience, the book builds towards a final twist, one that attempts to tie everything together and leave the reader with sort of like an unexpected ending. It's less horror and more of a calm, low stakes ghost story vibe with a literary storytelling type. What was interesting about this book was the setting: Goa, rain, folklore. I would have loved to read a book like that, which is why I picked it up. But I'm going to be honest here. This book has like 4.1 stars rating on Amazon. It shows up on a bunch of best Indian horror books list, and every time I see it there, now after reading it, I just have one question: how? How is this book a bestseller? How are people enjoying this? Because from where I stand, there's just no way. And maybe the answer lies in when it came out. Maybe it released at a time when we just didn't have enough good horror writers around. No Neil De Silva with his intense supernatural novels. No Anita Krishan with her creepy atmospheric ghost stories. No Nidhi Upadhyay writing thrillers with horror elements. And I don't know if most of India has still discovered the best horror authors in the international space. Like if I ask today, if I ask 10 readers if they have read even Stephen King, I'm sure 9 will say no. And Stephen King is like beginning. He's not like the top of the whole thing. I know I have offended a lot of people with that, guys. I love Stephen King. I'm just saying I like to believe there's even like better authors out there. My husband is like totally like I'm destroying your setup right now. Just don't. I like Stephen King. I have not. But that's the point. I think I can read better authors, and I think there are more better horror authors out there. Stephen King is really good. Like, the point is, in India, how many people have read Stephen King? If I ask 10 people, 9 will say no. So in India, if you only had 10 like terrible horror books, I guess the least bad one gets to wear the crown. The stories in this particular book, Afterlife Ghost Stories from Goa, are flat. No suspense, no chilling tension, no gripping structure. It's supposed to be ghost stories, plural, but every single one felt like it was just there. You wait for something to happen, you expect the atmosphere to build, but instead you get some tales with very little payoff. And that was painful. Anyway, lastly, we have Ghost Stories of Shimla Hills by Minakshi Chaudhary. This book is again a collection of ghost stories, all rooted in Shimla's folklore. Tales passed down through generations, popular among locals, and reflective of the region's relationship with the supernatural. So, if you have ever wanted a deep dive into Shimla's haunted history and eerie legends, this one technically sort of like fits the bill. It's local, it's focused, and it promises ghost stories grounded in sort of like real life belief systems. But that's where the promise ends. If you ask me whether you should pick up this book, my answer is a clear no. It reminded me of Afterlife Ghost Stories from Goa in terms of, not in terms of content, but in terms of how both books feel like they are doing well just because maybe they are available on for free on Kindle Unlimited. And KU books, as we all know, tend to be the light, fast, and I'm not saying all of them are not good, a lot of them are good, but they're often more about accessibility than depth. And that's fine until people start calling these great horror books. Let me be clear. The stories themselves have potential. The ideas are there. The execution is what absolutely kills it. The writing has no flair, no voice, no craft. There's no atmosphere, no build-up of dread, no rhythm to how the fear or anything unfolds. It's just like plain, flat storytelling. There's barely any storytelling. It's just like plain, flat stories on paper that seriously make you stop and ask, was this even read by other people and edited before it was published? And look, I have read 400 plus books. I have given average Indian books a fair shot just because they are Indian. I want to support local authors, but I also think it's high time we stop accepting mediocrity in the name of support. If you have a good story but can't write it well, collaborate with someone. Get help, hire a ghostwriter. Because what ends up happening is that when books like this become popular because they're free, someone reads them and then they go, Indian horror just isn't that good. That is not true. We have brilliant horror writers, we have brilliant Indian writers waiting to be discovered by people who just think like, I only read international literature. We have a lot of good stuff here, but this is not it. And when like people end up reading this because this is popular, this is what's popular, this is what's going to be read, and when they read this and when they get turned off and close themselves off to entire Indian literature, it's a huge loss to the country. And that is why I'm furious at this book. And another reason why I'm disappointed and furious at this book is because this book had a foreword by Ruskin Bond. And I think that 10x my disappointment. Anyway, that's my review for this book. Now let's get into the fun part, ranking these books. After diving into all of these stories, the writing styles, the overall vibes for each of these, it's time to tier them based on what worked and what didn't, according to me. Whether you're looking for a good scare or just some spooky stories to pass your time, here's where these books land in my ranking. These are the 4 tiers I have totally made up for fun. Number 1, actually good, well written. Number 2, mid but fun. Number 3, absolute snooze fest. And number 4, I am mad this one even sold copies. And with no guesses, you can guess that at number 4, I'm putting Ghost Stories of Shimla Hills by Minakshi Chaudhary. This is the book that genuinely frustrated me. The potential was there, but the writing and execution was so weak, so weak, that I couldn't justify its popularity. I couldn't justify that I had to read this whole book. At number 3, Absolute Snooze Fest. That award or that tier is where we will put Afterlife Ghost Stories from Goa. Look, I wanted to like this one a lot, I really did, but it just didn't hold my attention. The stories are flat, the writing lacks any real style, and there's no genuine fear factor. I couldn't help but drag myself through it, hoping it would improve, but it just did not. And then I'm skipping, tier 2 at totally because I don't have anything to put into that right now. And at number 1, actually good, well written books, we have a tie. Ghost in the Dark Silence, a collection with strong storytelling, rich atmosphere, the stories build suspense, explore deep themes, and have a solid, captivating writing style that pulls you in. And lastly, we have Yakshini, a well crafted novel that blends suspense, horror, and mythology seamlessly. It's a rare gem in modern Indian horror literature with depth in character development and a gripping narrative. And that's a wrap. Indian horror has some real standouts, like I said, Yakshini, Ghost in the Dark Silence, and previously I have loved Ghost Stories of Ghost of Silent Hills by Anita Krishan, and also like Nidhi Upadhyay's book That Night, which is more of a thriller. I have made a separate video which you can check out for more detail on these two books, the first Anita Krishan book and Nidhi Upadhyay's book. They are also good. And yes, I would really recommend you to read these books and skip the other two. And if you think I have missed reading some really cool horror book, just let me know in the comments down below, because I am definitely looking for more recommendations, reading more horror books, and making videos about them. So if you want to catch those videos, make sure you are subscribed, hit a thumbs up to this video, and thank you so much for watching. This is Manvi signing off. I'll be back with another video very soon.